rain was relentless that night, sheets of silver slicing through the darkness, hammering against the tall glass windows of the city's most powerful man's office. Inside, amidst the sterile glow of screens and the echo of ticking clocks, sat Ethan Cole. Cold, brilliant, untouchable. The CEO of Cole Enterprises, he was known for turning everything he touched into gold, except perhaps his own heart. While the world admired his success, few knew that beneath that empire of glass and steel was a man whose soul had long turned to stone. But that night, as he sifted through a pile of unopened letters that his assistant had placed on his desk, mostly charity requests, fan mail, and proposals, one small handwritten envelope caught his eye. It wasn't typed. It wasn't polished. The paper was slightly crumpled, the handwriting uneven, almost childlike, and on the front, written in blue crayon, were the words that made him pause. For a moment, Ethan almost tossed it aside, but something, perhaps the innocence of those words, made him tear it open. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper, smudged with fingerprints and faint traces of tears. As he unfolded it, the world outside his office seemed to fade. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small acts of love, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us reach more hearts with stories that remind us what it means to be human. Ethan stared at the words. His jaw tightened, and his chest felt heavy, as if a hand had reached in and squeezed his heart. He tossed the letter aside and muttered something about sentimental nonsense, but even as he said it, he found himself glancing back at the paper. The innocence of the handwriting, the bravery between the lines, it wouldn't leave him. For days he tried to bury himself in work, numbers, meetings, deals, but every time he looked out of his office window, he thought about another window, room 209, and a little girl watching the world from behind glass. He hated that it bothered him. He hated that something inside him was cracking. But the truth was, Ethan had once known what it meant to look out a window and wish for more. Years ago, before he was a CEO, he'd been a boy in a broken home, his father gone, his mother sick, and dreams crushed beneath bills and despair. He'd promised himself he'd never feel weak again, never need anyone, never let emotion guide his choices, and he'd kept that promise until Lily's letter arrived. Finally, one morning, after staring at the unopened envelope on his desk for the 100th time, he made a decision he couldn't quite explain. He canceled a meeting, got in his car, and drove to Rosewood Hospital. When he entered the children's ward, everything seemed too bright, too white, too still. The air smelled like sanitizer and something sad. A nurse recognized him instantly. Everyone did. And when he asked about Lily, she smiled softly, her eyes glimmering. She'll be so happy. She's been talking about you all week. He hesitated outside room 209. Through the glass, he saw her, a tiny figure in a pale gown, tubes running from her hands, a teddy bear clutched against her chest. Yet her face was radiant, as if she carried sunlight within her. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. "You came," she whispered when he stepped in. Ethan felt something catch in his throat. "I did," he said quietly, pulling a chair close. The next few minutes were unlike anything he'd experienced in years. She didn't talk about pain or fear or hospitals. She talked about swings, flowers, clouds, and her dream of seeing fireflies. She told him she wanted to be a builder of happy places, just like him. And somewhere between her laughter and the way she spoke about hope, as if it were a living thing, Ethan felt something melt inside him. He visited again, and again. What started as one visit became a weekly ritual. He brought her books, sketches of the next park he was designing, and sometimes just stories about his day. She called him Mr. E slowly. The people in his life began to notice the change. His staff whispered that the CEO smiled more these days, that his voice had softened. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like he was building towers to reach the sky. He felt like he was building something real, something human. But life has a cruel way of testing fragile hope. One evening, when Ethan arrived with a bouquet of lilies, her favorite, the nurse stopped him at the door. Her face said everything. His knees nearly gave out. The world went silent. Lily had taken a turn for the worse. He rushed to her bedside. She was pale, barely breathing, yet her eyes fluttered open when she sensed him there. She smiled faintly. "Mr. E, I have something for you." Her trembling hand reached for an envelope under her pillow. "Don't read it now. Promise me. You'll read it when I'm gone." Tears burned his eyes, but he nodded. "You're not going anywhere, Lily," he whispered, his voice breaking, but she only smiled again. "It's okay. I'm not scared anymore. You made me happy." That night, as machines beeped softly in the background, Lily slipped away. And the letter, her final one, lay unopened on Ethan's desk for days. When he finally opened it, he couldn't breathe. Ethan broke down. For the first time in 20 years, the man who was too strong to feel, too powerful to cry, wept until his soul felt clean again. The next morning, his company halted all major projects. The board was furious, investors confused, but Ethan didn't care. He had something far more important to build. Months later, where the gray parking lot beside Rosewood Hospital once stood, now bloomed a sea of color and life. A park filled with laughter, flowers, and hope. At the center stood a shining silver swing set that reached high into the sky. On its plaque, engraved beneath the arch, were the words, "The day it opened, hundreds came. Patients, families, strangers." But Ethan stood quietly in the corner, hands in his pockets, eyes glistening. A breeze passed through, carrying a single white feather that landed at his feet. For a moment, he looked up and smiled. Somewhere, he believed, Lily was smiling too. Years later, Lily's Star Park became more than a playground. It became a symbol of healing. Schools visited it, hospitals partnered with it, and the Ethan Cole Foundation was born to build parks around the world in her memory. The man who once measured success in profits now measured it in smiles. And every year on the anniversary of her passing, Ethan visited the swing in the middle of the park. He would bring a single white lily, sit down and whisper, "Thank you for teaching me how to live." Because in the end, it wasn't a business deal, a mansion, or a billion-dollar company that changed his life. It was a little girl with a crayon, a letter, and a heart big enough to reach a man lost behind his own walls. If this story touched your heart, please don't scroll away. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to spread this message of kindness, love, and second chances. What would you do if you received a letter that could change someone's life? Because sometimes one small letter can rebuild a broken heart.